Welcome to Belly Dance Alchemy, a captivating blend of the best elements of career and professional development and the magic of belly dance. I'm your host, Kelly Nottingham. Ready to make your day job sparkle and your dance life grow in new and inspiring ways? Well, let's see what we can brew up. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. This is the first of 2 episodes on job insecurity and layoffs. It feels relevant right now with so much instability in our work and our world economy, doesn't it? In fact, clicking on the news this morning on my phone, I saw that another company was announcing a round of layoffs. So today we're discussing how to manage the practical side of job insecurity and layoffs. Next episode is all about the emotional side of dealing with a layoff. You may be thinking that this episode isn't really relevant if you're not directly being impacted by layoffs, but you probably have friends or family members who are. Frankly, with the state of our current economy in the world, it's more and more common to see people getting laid off. This is actually something that companies do very regularly nowadays, when 20, 30 years ago, it used to be pretty uncommon. And even if you're not getting laid off right now, it's even more common for people to be worried that their job might get eliminated. Now, that not knowing is what I mean by job instability. You aren't getting laid off yet, but you might. And the anxiety and inability to kind of plan long term or settle into a job and a routine can be really stressful on its own. And as a dancer or a dance teacher, you may have fellow dancers or students who are struggling with this, but are a little bit embarrassed to tell you. You may be trying to arrange troupe performances or shows or field trips to a local restaurant that features dancers or workshops and are wondering why people aren't signing up. It may be the dancers in your circle are holding back from spending money or holding back on committing to events when they're feeling that sense of impending doom or the limbo and lack of energy that comes from job instability. And the effort and energy that you're putting into something when you're not getting the response that you want can cause you stress. So yeah, the current layoff culture of our economy and the emotional repercussions of that could be affecting you. Maybe this episode can help you to help others who may be dealing with this situation. If so, please share this episode. Nobody going through a layoff should feel alone. All right, so let's get into today's topic. Now, just for transparency and not sympathy, I'm over it by now. I've actually been laid off 3 times in my career, and I narrowly avoided probably getting laid off a 4th time because I left that job a month before all of the layoffs happened. The first time I got laid off was at a hospital where I saw it coming, so I could actually prepare for it. There were 2 waves of layoffs that I managed to get through with my job before the one that got me I got laid off in the 3rd round of layoffs that came through. Now, we'll be talking a little bit about survivor's guilt in the next episode, but I actually wanted to just throw it out there. I had really bad survivor's guilt from surviving the first 2 rounds of layoffs because colleagues of mine who had been with the company much longer, one who was a single mother, lost her job, and I managed to keep mine even though I had been there for less than 3 months. So, ouch. I'm not saying that I had it harder than they did, but survivor's guilt is definitely a thing. We'll be talking about that in the next episode. Now, the second time I got laid off was a total surprise. My boss at this small company was going to be leaving to join another company and told me that he was going to take me with him. I went on a vacation thinking that when I came back, he was going to announce that we both were leaving, and I wanted to go ahead and get this vacation in. It was the only time I was going to be able to take it that year. When I got back from that trip, I found out that my boss had already put in his notice that he was leaving. He told me that there were 3 days left before his last day, which was also going to be my last day, but he could not take me with him after all. So I had 3 days left of work before I was losing my job, and I was not going to be getting any severance. We'll be talking about anger in the next episode too. I will say I did not behave in a very professional manner at that point, but I did manage to get some severance from the business owners. So there you go. Now, the third time I got laid off was due to a corporate merger. Any of you who have ever been through any kind of merger or acquisition know that this is very common for duplicative roles within these two organizations, that things are going to be kind of picked over and decisions will be made about who needs to stay and who needs to go. Now, this particular company, I was on the small end. I was on the acquired end of this merger. My company was getting bought out by another. And in an amazing show of zero logic, they laid off the entire training team first, right before they rolled out a massive number of changes to policies, procedures, software programs, and leadership policies that we were then unavailable to help train all of the people on. So, that made zero sense. Now, I saw the writing on the wall with that one. Because we knew the merger was coming, I kind of suspected that one might happen. So fortunately, I was able to prepare in advance again. My first layoff was painful because I took it personally. The second layoff was painful because it was a complete surprise and I was unprepared. By the time we got to the third layoff, I was like, just give me my check, give me my severance. I'm ready to go. I've already got my ducks in a row and I'm ready to leave. Now, whether you've been laid off or fear that you might be, there are some steps you can take to help control what happens. That sense of control over the situation where you may feel like you don't have a lot of control, that's going to really help. So if you're feeling a lot of feelings, of course you're going to be, again, talking about that in the next episode. Our behaviors can be affected by those emotions. But if we can be proactive about taking control of what we can, we're going to help ourselves to feel a lot better. Now, I see the practical pieces of job insecurity or layoff, sort of the day-to-day mechanisms, got to keep things going in my life side of things, as falling into 7 buckets. The first bucket is finishing up your current job, if at all possible, so that you leave on a high note. Number 2, collecting all of the tactical information you need to move forward in your life. Number 3, connecting with colleagues and building your network before you leave. Number 4, preparing for a change to your financial situation, paying rent, mortgage, groceries, and all of that jazz. Bucket number 5 is dealing with potentially losing your health insurance if employer provided. Number 6 is managing your pensions, if you're lucky enough to have one, or your 401k, 401a, or retirement accounts, again, if you're lucky enough to have them. Number 7, our final bucket, is finding a new job. Now, these buckets will still work even if you're not directly getting laid off, but you think you might get laid off. If you're worried that you're going to lose your job, you're dealing with the need to continue that set of work behaviors to keep working through your job while simultaneously dealing with that anticipatory anxiety of what could happen. And this can be hard. You're in that weird limbo where, I don't know about you, but when I've been in those situations, I just wish the decision were already made. Just tell me something one way or another. Don't make me sit here and guess. But at the same time, you still have to do your job. So it's almost like you have to wear 2 masks. What you want to do and feel and what you have to do right now to keep working. Now, this is a technique that I have used to help with this kind of situation, any kind of panic, nervousness, anxiety situation, and it may sound really weird. But if you find that your emotions are getting in the way of doing the work, set a specific time on your phone or on a timer, maybe 5 minutes to 10 minutes. This is your panic and emotional release time. So anytime you feel the need to worry or stress, you tell yourself you have this amount of time at a specific time during your day, and you have to wait until your worry time. When that time comes, you set your timer, you journal, you draw, you talk out loud, you take a walk, you go into the woods and yell. You do whatever you need to do during that time to help you release and cope with those emotions. Now, I found generally that I ran out of emotions before I ran out of time. So if that happens to you, you can go back to your work or whatever else it was that you were doing. If you need the full time, then take the full time. Now, you can do this with someone else if you tend to want to talk things out, if you're one of those conversationalist stressors. But I recommend not doing it with someone who is also dealing with the same issues, because fire feeds fire, stress feeds stress. So unless you feel like you and your colleague or friend are going to be able to talk it out and focus more on the release of those emotions than feeding the emotions, go ahead. But if you think you're just going to feed each other's stress, then try something on your own or find somebody else who you can talk to who is going to help kind of let you release that stress out. Now, I've been in situations before, I'm sure many of you have as well, where you think layoffs are looming on the horizon. They're being discussed in the employee rumor mill or grapevine. That alone, those whispers of things coming down the pipeline, can also cause a lot of anxiety. So anytime you start to feel this stress or anxiety about, I am going to lose my job or I might lose my job, the best way to deal with it is to be as proactive as possible to prepare just in case it happens. If it does happen, you're way ahead of the curve. And if it doesn't happen, you've already set yourself up for some career and personal success anyway, so it can be a win-win. So let's get into our buckets. Bucket number 1, finish up your current job on a high note. Now, the big question here is, why bother? These people don't want me here, so why should I give any more effort? Okay, fair enough, but hear me out. This is not about them. This is about you. This is about you taking the high road, having your own sense of integrity that you did your best, and leaving with your head held high. If you do your best in the last few days or weeks on the job, you know something about yourself. You know you're a person who isn't downtrodden, who you don't let anger or hopelessness get the best of you. And frankly, it might make them second guess themselves. And then you get that feeling of satisfaction too. Now, just don't expect that they'll actually change their minds. I'm sure it might happen once in a blue moon, but the reality is once they've gone through all of the back-end HR-related processes of eliminating a job, it's not likely to be reversed. So don't go into it thinking like, if I do my best, I'm going to get them to change their minds. That's that stage of change management called denial, and it's probably not going to happen. But if you leave on a high note, it can give you that sense of satisfaction that they might regret letting you go. And sometimes that's enough. Next up, write out a list of the things you want or need to do before your job ends. What projects can you finish up before you go? What can you wrap up before you leave? What does the poor sap who has to take your work next need to know about it? And yes, I said it that way because that's always helped me to get through some of my own anger. And the same goes with the next piece in this bucket, training documentation on the processes or on your work. Yes, it's possible or probable that someone else will be taking on the work you were doing, whether they want it or can handle that workload. And a lot of you have been in this situation, I bet. I know I have, where I didn't get laid off, but then I'm stuck trying to do my own work and the work of a former colleague who was let go. Now, when that person left angry or upset and didn't leave any guidance on how to do their work, I get it. We all get it, right? But it's taking out the anger on the wrong person. It's probably not your replacement's fault that you got let go, and it's not really fair, and it's really not good karma to take it out on that person. So if you can, try to leave some instructions or guidance to the poor person who's left behind to pick up the pieces. As much as you want to, Do not badmouth your company publicly. This has backfired on social media so many times, including LinkedIn, not just other social media. People get mad, they air their dirty laundry to the world, and now when you apply for new jobs, that vitriol against your former employer will pop up. Don't give in to the temptation to blast out your hurt and anger to the world. If there's something that is illegal that took place, then absolutely take your complaints, but to the correct legal channel. Companies are mostly pretty savvy nowadays about not screwing up royally when laying people off. Yes, there have been some high-profile public complaints against companies doing things in a really horrible or potentially illegal way recently. We've seen that. And yes, those complaints were brought forth on social media and got some change to be enacted. Maybe. But to the people who went public, getting a new job can be much harder. Other companies may be concerned about bringing even a well-intentioned whistleblower to their company. Is it fair? No. But if you have a legitimate complaint, instead of voicing it on social media, take it to the appropriate channels first. That could be a lawyer, a third-party ethics hotline, or the Department of Labor. Otherwise, you risk the validity of your complaint being heard or being actionable. All right, bucket number 2. Collect all the tactical information you need to move forward. This means being sure you have the correct job information, including your start date, your end date on the job, and the address and contact information of the company. If you can, get a copy of your job description to take with you, since that is going to help with your resume. You also want to collect any kudos or pats on the back that you maybe received on the job, metrics from your work that you've done to include on your next resume. Find out about resources that are available to you as you transition out of your job. Now, your human resources team should give you information on how to get employment verification, which you will likely need as you apply for new jobs. So what this is for large companies nowadays anyway, it's usually an 800 number that future employers can call to verify your dates of employment. They usually find out only that you were employed there, your dates of employment, and maybe whether or not you are considered rehirable by the organization. That's another reason to leave on a high note. If you work for a smaller company, you may not have an 800 number, but in that case, you need to be sure to get the HR department's phone number or a general email before you leave so that when you apply for jobs, employers can verify your work history. Along the same lines, keep your severance letter for future proof you were laid off versus getting fired for subpar performance. Some companies provide employee assistance programs, or EAPs, and support for people being let go. EAP programs are third-party vendors that a lot of companies sign up with to provide online resources, online support, chat with counselors, legal help, therapy appointments, financial help, all of that kind of stuff. And it's all covered by your employer. So many people don't use their EAP programs because they're afraid that their employer is going to know what you were looking for or what you talked about with a counselor. First of all, these companies that provide the services, they don't share that information. They might share an overall usage number, but they're not going to go into specifics on what employees use or not. Secondly, if your employer is paying for it, you might as well use it while you have it. Do not let your ego get in the way. Use every resource that they're offering. These could be resume and job search assistant budgeting advice, more on that later, and so on. Use them up. Consider this a way to stick it to the company if you feel mad about it, but don't let those free resources go. In just a moment, we're going to be talking more about insurance, but as a reminder, before you leave the company, if you're in the United States, make sure you get any information available about COBRA insurance coverage. Now, when you find out about these resources, again, use them. I can't stress this enough. Don't let your frustration or your anger or your pride get in the way of using these services. Placement services, resume help, interview help, counseling, all of these are beneficial. Use all of them and use them early. Before we move on to the next bucket, I did want to share a funny story about this one. So at that job at the hospital where I was working, I was, of course, working in the training and development department. And when they announced the first round of layoffs, I asked our HR team if the people who were affected by those layoffs were going to be getting any information about how to apply for unemployment, how to write a resume, how to do interviews. I knew that some of the people that were losing their jobs had been with the hospital for a very long time and had never done an online job search before. And my soft, sympathetic heart wanted to help as much as possible. So I got permission to put together a guide, a transition guide for them. I pulled a ton of information from the Department of Labor site, how to apply for unemployment, how to apply for health insurance, how to write resumes, how to do interviews, how to look for jobs, how to create a budget, how to talk to your family about losing your job, all of these different things. I put them in a nice little booklet, got everything all pretty and organized, and it was given out at each round of layoffs. When the third round of layoffs came, and I went in to meet with the HR person who was my designated person to tell me that I was losing my job, she actually tried to hand me a copy of the book that I had written about getting laid off. And I just had to laugh a little bit and say, I think I've already got that, but thank you. I appreciate that you think it's useful. I guess it didn't save my job, but I was at least able to help some people. That still kind of makes me laugh to this day that they turned around and handed me the transition guide that I had written for them. Anyway, moving on to bucket 3. Connect with colleagues and build your network before you leave. Make sure to get contact information for people you want to stay connected to. And let people know that you're leaving the company. Now, this is controversial, but I recommend telling people you got laid off. Sometimes companies don't want you to do that, but you know what? I don't really care. Why? I've been in situations where I've been laid off or where I put in my notice voluntarily and was told not to tell anyone because the company, A, didn't want to start a panic. Hello, the grapevining companies is alive and well, y'all. You aren't hiding anything. Or B, I was promised a formal announcement that I was leaving and that announcement would go out to the company. I had seen that other people had been told the same thing, and surprise, nothing was ever sent out. Those job eliminations were just swept under the carpet. So I sent out my own. Now, I'm not recommending sending a company-wide email with you making an obscene gesture and telling the CEO where to shove the job. Do not do that. But I am saying don't let the company hide the fact that you're leaving, especially if you've seen this kind of thing happen in the past. Why? Well, many people get jobs through networking, and if people don't know you're gone, they can't help you find a new job. Along the same lines, letting people know you're leaving is the perfect time to ask for recommendations on LinkedIn. These go on your profile on LinkedIn, and they're a little like individual Google reviews. So you can ask for these when you tell people that you're leaving. If you've liked working with me, if you would like to help me in my job search, please go on recommendations on LinkedIn and leave a little note about how great I am to work with. Now, if your job was eliminated and you didn't get a chance to connect before you left, maybe you got walked out of the building in one of those awful kinds of layoffs, reach out anyway. Connect with former colleagues on LinkedIn or other social media sites or through calls or emails or texts. Understand that those who didn't get laid off may be dealing with that survivor's guilt we talked about a little while ago. And so they may feel uncomfortable reaching out to you. Maybe they think that they're rubbing it in or that you won't want to hear from them. So be open with them and give them some time to adjust to the idea too. But you be proactive in reaching out. Now, some folks may see you as an outsider particularly when it comes to sharing information about what's going on in the company. That's their way of approaching the situation. So just know that you can't control it. You may have other people that want to continually update you on what's going on with the company. And if you're comfortable with that, that's fine. But if you feel like it takes you on a downward spiral of stress or anger or frustration, it's okay to tell them that you just really don't want to hear about that anymore because it's still a sore spot for you. Now, it can be really hard to talk to your colleagues and work friends about getting laid off. You may have a lot of fear about losing those friendships and connections. Honestly, some of them will go away. That's natural. It's part of being an adult in modern society. But some of those connections will stay. And thankfully, we have the technology nowadays to stay as connected as we want. Also, know that you'll make new work friends. You're not going to lose everybody in your social circle. Your social circle just might shift a little bit. And if it's been a while since you've connected with your non-work friends, well, this is probably a really great time to reconnect with them too. Bucket number 4, prepare for a change to your financial situation. All right, this is probably the scariest bucket for a lot of us. So it's important to look at your finances as soon as possible. Taking control here will make you feel better. Not looking at your finances and just kind of crossing your fingers and hoping things will work out is a surefire recipe for mega stress. Yes, looking at your budget can be stressful too, but it's better to know than to not know. Apply for unemployment if you qualify as soon as you can. Now, for Americans, just so you know, some states in the U.S. will not give you unemployment until your severance runs out. Some of them won't even let you apply for unemployment until your severance runs out. But go ahead and research, get ready, and start that process as soon as you can. Also, know that sometimes it can take 2 or more weeks to start receiving payments after you've already submitted your information, depending on your state. So as soon as you qualify, apply. Also, it's important to know what the cutoff for benefits are if you start doing a part-time job or gig work. This one has bitten me in the rear end before. I thought I was doing a great thing by taking on part-time work, but they actually reduced my unemployment because I was working. Some states will take out the equivalent of your reported earnings above a certain amount, say $50 or $100. Do not lie if you're making money on the side. It is not worth the drama and it's fraud. You will get caught, so don't do it. Take a good hard look at your budget. Now, if you don't have one, guess what? It's time to make a budget. If you're saying to yourself right now, I have no idea what our costs are in our household, then it's definitely time to budget. Uncertainty about finances hits on those most basic psychological and physiological needs, right? Food, shelter, water, safety. Budgeting isn't the most exciting thing in the world to do, but it's important to know where you stand. Think of your home life as a business. You need to manage the income and expenses, and this will help to give you some sense of control. You can't fix a problem if you can't see it clearly. So do this early to get ahead. In fact, whenever I hear people starting to get worried about layoffs, my first recommendation, look at your household budget and start to make some decisions. So what kind of decisions? Well, of course, where to spend that income, right? And where we need to save. What luxuries do you need to cut or cancel until your new normal budget is kind of set? Things like gym memberships, spa memberships, dance memberships can sometimes be put on hold. Talk to your gym, your instructor, your salon, wherever you have a membership, and explain the situation. Now, you don't have to go into detail, obviously, but you might be surprised at what they can do to help you. You might also be surprised at how many free online workouts there are. You may be able to forego your treadmill, take a walk at the park, do some exercises online, find different ways to get the benefits out of the free resources that are out there in the world. If you have student loans, you can usually take a forbearance if you lose your job. Now, you don't want to prolong the agony of student loans. Who does? But this is one you can address sooner rather than later and will open up additional funds that you can use to pay for food or housing. Are there social costs that you can slim down? And which ones are you willing to give up? And which ones are you really less willing to give up? Going out to eat can be changed to a home cooking adventure night where family members take turns creating a menu item of their choice each week. Make it fun. Challenge yourself to cut down on your grocery bill, but be creative with what you can make from the ingredients you buy. I mean, you can even start gardening for very little money and grow some of your own salad mix. Movie going can be exchanged for game night. Vacations can be changed to staycations with local activities and free places to visit. Know that this isn't permanent. It's just temporary to get you through until your finances are back where you want them to be. And don't forget your local library. They have a ton of resources that you can use. Free internet, computers, low-cost printing, DVDs, audiobooks. And I highly, highly recommend the Libby app, Libby. Libby app connects with your library card to your local library for a vast quantity of magazines, online books, audiobooks, all kinds of stuff that you can get for free with your library card. Some libraries even offer workshops for job seekers, book clubs for adults and kids, free activities like crafting meetups, all kinds of stuff. So if you don't have a library card, go get one. Bucket number 5, dealing with potentially losing your health insurance. Now, for many of our listeners outside of the United States, you may be a little shocked to hear some of this. But depending on, where you live, if you're in the United States, a lot of us here in the States get our insurance through our employers. So if you lose your job, you lose your health insurance. Depending on your location and your financial situation, you may be able to qualify for government-assisted payments on healthcare. So as soon as you think you might lose your job and thus your insurance coverage, go ahead and start researching. Now, this includes gathering information about COBRA coverage. This is a safety net type of healthcare coverage for people who've lost their jobs or had their hours reduced dramatically. It's not permanent coverage, but basically it extends the healthcare coverage you had under your employer for a limited period of time. Now, not all companies have to offer COBRA coverage. Some states provide for smaller companies to have like a mini COBRA sort of thing. So don't just immediately assume that you don't have COBRA if you work for a small company. You can usually keep your COBRA coverage for 18 months, but it can get very expensive because you're going to be paying the full premium yourself. Normally, the employer is paying a big portion of that, and they're not going to be covering that anymore. You will be. Now, you can sign up for a health insurance marketplace plan. This is often called Obamacare. Within 60 days of losing your job-based coverage, you can find information about that at healthcare.gov. You may also qualify for free or low-cost coverage through Medicaid, or if you have children, through the CHIP program, the Children's Health Insurance Program. So do your research early so that you're ready to move forward on your best option quickly. All right, bucket number 6 is going to be a short one. Manage your pension or retirement fund. So in case you did not know, I am not an expert on this. So my main point here is that you need to be proactive about this side of things. Frankly, I think a lot of people forget about their pension or retirement funds for a while after they lose their jobs, and they don't do anything to roll over their 401k or 401a into another kind of fund until they're getting the nasty gram letters saying, you have to roll this over or we're going to send you a check. Whatever you do, do not get a check on a potential rollover because they're going to take out a ton of taxes on it. As we're discussing this, Also, don't forget to update your mailing address if you move, because your pension or retirement fund company, if they can't find you to send you information, you could potentially be putting yourself in a bad situation financially. So as you are preparing yourself for this new chapter, remember to bring all of your savings with you. Bring that money with you. Get the information you need to take charge of your retirement funds. And if you have stock in your employer, bring that information too. Get this before you leave your job. And then ask somebody who's actually qualified to help you with all of that, because that's not me. Moving on to our last bucket. Bucket number 7, finding a new job. Now, if you have the luxury, and yes, this is a luxury, to take a few weeks off before starting your job search, you may want to do that for your own stress levels and well-being. Again, we're going to discuss that a little bit more in the next episode, but I want to put that out there now. For most of us, though, it's not really feasible to take breather time after a layoff, and we need to jump back into the job market right away. So how do we do that? Well, we need to refocus ourselves to this new reality. Our job is now finding another job. And we need to set ourselves up for success in this new temporary job. It's a great time to ask yourself some big questions. What kind of job do you want? Do you want to do the same kind of work? Where would you like to work? Nowadays, we need to ask if we want to work in an office or hybrid or remote, or are we flexible about that? Are there any specific companies we want to work for? Any that we don't want to work for? Maybe you want to move into a different career. Maybe you want to be an entrepreneur. Is this the right time to start that business you've been thinking about? And do you have the savings to get you through the gap of not being profitable in your new business right away? Find out what other services your Department of Labor or Unemployment Office offers. Some offer free resume and interview workshops, job placement assistance, computers for job searches, all of that kind of stuff. Set a new routine for yourself, especially if you need structure in your life. If you don't like a really rigid time schedule, think about chunks of time that you're going to spend every day working on different aspects of your job search. Now, if you're still working, set a time each week for job searching, resume writing, interview practice, and so on. Make sure that you're taking out a little bit of time to do that. Set up a physical place for your job search. Now, this doesn't have to be all fancy decorated, but you should at least be able to feel comfortable. You should have the items that you need to be able to keep track of your login information, jobs you've applied for, and be comfortable doing online interviews in that location. Now, you also will need to set up a virtual place for your job search. So think email. Google has free email, calendars, a suite of office software that you can use to put up your resume, cover letters, all that kind of stuff, and track where you've applied for jobs. Microsoft also has options. Just please be sure to pick a respectable email to go on your resume and not something inappropriate. Speaking of resumes, update your resume. There are tons of templates online. I have a lot of opinions on these. I have done some videos that talk about graphic resumes and why they're not necessarily a good idea. So stick to a traditional resume. It's going to work with the systems, the automated systems that companies use nowadays for the applicant tracking. As you're writing your resume, get some friends to look it over for you and give feedback. Keep it to 2 pages max. Make it broad enough for someone outside of your role or company to understand what you're talking about, and use as many numbers as make sense. So you want to put in the money that you saved on a project or the number of people you managed, that kind of thing, to show the extent or the scope of your skills. If you want a more organized step-by-step process on writing your resume, I do have an online resume course available on Teachable. It's about 2 hours long, walks you step by step through writing a great resume. I'll put a link in the show notes to that course if you're interested. Now, don't be embarrassed to ask for support or help from your coworkers with your resume writing and with your job search in general. Meet for lunch or coffee with other people who maybe were laid off or who are in the same state of limbo that you are. You can vent for a little bit, but don't let it take over the conversation. Keep these conversations forward focused and moving on to the next step. Set up online job searches on Indeed or LinkedIn that will email you with jobs that fit the kinds of title, the field, the salary, or the location that you're looking for. You'll get emails on a daily or weekly basis, and they scour the internet for those job listings. So it's really beneficial to get those online job searches set up. Practice for your job interviews, and I do cover a little bit about this in my course. Many companies use behavioral interviews, which ask questions about situations you faced in the past. If you've never done one of these are challenging interviews to walk into unprepared. So figure out, if you can, what kind of interview that you're going to have and prepare for it in advance. It may be a panel interview. It may be a one-on-one interview. It may be a series of interviews with different people. You may have to have a portfolio or a presentation ready. Try to find that out. You can find sample interview questions all over the internet and have the answers thought through, jotted down in note form to take with you to your interview, and speak them out loud several times so that you're not fumbling over your words in the moment. Enlist the help of other people to find your next job opportunity. This can mean volunteering if you have the time. Broaden your social circle out by volunteering. It gives you opportunities to network. Speaking of networking, reach out to or join a professional network in your field. Let people know you're looking for work. Otherwise, they can't help you. So yes, job loss or the possibility of job loss can be very tough. Go easy on yourself. Be kind to yourself. Recriminations, beating yourself up, taking a lot of blame for what happened, especially if it's unfounded, is not going to help you at all. Take these ideas one step at a time. If you need to step away to take a walk or breathe or relax, do it. Don't let your job search take up 100% of your time. Exhaustion isn't going to help you. Know that you'll get through this. All right, everyone. I hope that this has been helpful. If you know of someone who may be struggling with job insecurity or layoffs and you think this episode would help, please share it with them. And if you have suggestions for how you have dealt successfully with job insecurity or a layoff, I would love to hear it, and we'll share it out with our listeners. Take care, everybody. Talk to you soon. Okay, here's a quick aside. If you have as one of your new goals for this year to find a job that you really enjoy, but you're having a hard time writing your resume, I can absolutely help with that. I have an online resume course that walks you through the process step by step using my 20 plus years of corporate training and development experience to help you craft a resume that's really going to make you shine. If you're interested, I will link to it in the show notes. Right now, we are running that course for only $57. You get lifetime usage out of that course. You can go back and review as many times as you would like. So if you're interested in growing your expertise in writing your own resume and preparing for your interviews with that resume, and if you'd like to support me and the podcast, I would appreciate it. Thanks. Well, thanks for listening. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to this podcast and share the magic with your dance friends. If you want more, you can sign up for our mailing list at bellydancealchemy.org, or you can email me your suggestions and feedback. I would love to hear from you at bellydancealchemypodcast@gmail.com. Bye.